If the Nikon Z100-400 f4.5 to 5.6 VRS sounds exactly like the lens you've always needed, not just desired, but really needed with a capital N, then you can now welcome me to the club too. You may or may not remember, but in my Christmas video, I mentioned that I tried it just for a few minutes at a horse show. I talked someone into lending it to me. This time I've got one for slightly longer than that, and here it is. And it's fresh from those lovely people, helpful people at Hire a Camera. So first things first, let's check it out. Well, to be honest, as soon as you pick it up, the word that springs to mind is light. In fact, it's only 1,550 grams with the foot attached. To put that into perspective, that's a fraction more than the Z100-400. In fact, it's only about 3 seedless grapes more. And this is a 400. If you compare that to the 2,950 Z400 f2.8 that I tested a few months back, remember? The £14,000 one? And my lumpy 3,090 gram 300 VR2, this is barely in the featherweight division. Now that may lead you to think that it must be a bit plasticky, and in fairness it is a little bit, but more importantly, is that to keep the weight down as Nikon claim, or is it an indication of quality? Well, I won't know until I've tried it out tomorrow, to be quite honest with you, but you don't have to wait for that because that's coming to you in a couple of minutes, so stick around. In the meantime, let's keep talking about first impressions. So, looking a little bit closer, how solidly built is it? Well, this end of the lens is definitely metal, and it feels pretty sturdy and solid. This, on the other hand, feels less so, and this certainly isn't. That's very plasticky. Now, I don't like extended lenses much, but given that this lens is, yet again I say it, 100-400 and only 2,599, I shouldn't really be too harsh. The zoom ring is a little bit heavy to move, but it's got a fair bit to move as well, because Nikon have chosen this lens to introduce some new engineering that they call inner balance technology. Now that may sound like a weekend self-help group, but in fact it's just a little bit ingenious. As the front lens extends forward, a middle lens moves back as a counterbalance, and that keeps the centre of gravity in the right place, which is here. It's where you'd attach it to a gimbal, or if you were using a tripod, or in the palm of your hand if you're not. If you think of the optical wizardry that is involved in that, I'm seriously impressed, and I hope that it leads to more exciting progress for Nikon in the future. I hope it bodes well, to be honest, and I'm fairly confident about it. Anyway, and the fact that I find the zoom ring a little bit hard to turn when the camera is up to my eye, well, to be quite honest, that's something I'm willing to sacrifice for now. And there's certainly no creep reported either way, and that's because it's counterbalanced, of course. The focus ring is very smooth and it's very light, and this lens even has a control ring here that you can set in the camera to adjust aperture, etc. There are also 2 function buttons, which are here. I'll have to turn it around. The front ones comprise of 4 around the circumference, so however the camera is held, landscape or portrait, a button is available for you. The other function button is here, and it's on its own, but I guess once again Nikon reckon that you can reach it okay however the lens is held. So this button switches on the display that's here, and it also cycles the information shown. Now, the foot feels fairly solid and it's easily removed. If you don't like it, what you do is you unscrew this here, and then you press a little lever under here, and it comes off easily enough. I always keep mine on, to be quite honest, because I like having it in the palm of my hand, because I find it feels more solid. This button here, this knob here, allows the lens and camera to rotate when it's mounted to a tripod. As you see, I've been playing with it, so it's nowhere near where it should be. And you've got little dots to tell you when it's straight, which it isn't now. Anyway, under the cap here, as a matter of interest, is a security slot, which if you wish to attach a cable that companies like Kensington, I think it is, produce. And finally, back here is the usual auto manual focus switch and the full and limited focus switch, which is really useful if you're shooting objects further than 3 meters away. And oh, enough of the waffle and chat. Let's see what it can do. I've had this lens for 3 days already, but as I was busy with the editing and printing, it's been sat on the table behind me. Apparently the weather's been absolutely gorgeous while I've been stuck in the office, and I can't believe how dull it is now. But let's turn a negative into a positive by saying it'll be part of the test to see if I can live with the f5.6 that this lens offers, because that's what you get at anything above 360mm. Before that, 100mm to 124mm gives you f4.5, 125mm to 184 is f4.8, 185mm to 269mm is f5, and 270 to 359mm is f5.3. Don't worry, I'll write all that down below. During this video, I'm only shooting in manual. That means I can stick with the f5.6. Why am I choosing this? Well, the guy that I borrowed this lens from at the Excel told me that it's at its best at f11 to f6.3, which would be far too slow for me. So f5.6 seems a half decent compromise, doesn't it? As ever, these images are straight out of the camera, shot as RAW files, and then the only editing is to turn them into JPEGs and a little bit of cropping to make them fit the screen. The only reason I do that is because my video editing software doesn't accept RAW, and I think they look better fitting the screen, as I've just said. So what are you thinking of these so far? I'm pretty impressed. But there's nothing to compare them to, and as you know, I like my comparisons. I think it's the only way to decide if any new device is worth getting. When I test a piece of equipment, whether for a video like this or my business, my two questions are, will this replace one of my present, well, lenses in this case, in a positive way? And will it allow or assist me to get better images or increase my keeper rate? In other words, can I justify the purchase? So with that in mind, I think the best way to test the lens is by using it for my speciality, which is dog agility. It's fast and it will really test the focus speed and sharpness. In other words, if the eye isn't sharp, it's no good to me. As we preview some agility images that I took with the Z100-400, let me tell you about the settings that I used. The shutter speeds were either 2000, 2500, and the aperture was still f5.6. The average ISO for this session was 3200, not a particularly high setting for the old Z9. I took my usual agility lenses with me too, the Z100-400 f2.8 and the 300mm f2.8 VRii. Because as far as focal length is concerned, the Z100-400 could replace them both. Well, for my agility photography anyway, because I rarely go below 200mm. I've also brought along my Tamron SP150-600 G2 because it's the nearest lens I have to the Z100-400. And with a price tag of £999, the Tamron's 1500 quid cheaper. Let's see how they compare. Now, if you look at the eye in each of the larger pictures, you'll be forgiven for thinking they're all sharp. But lower your gaze to the lower portion of the screen, to the smaller images, because these are the full-size versions. And now you can see that the Z100-400 is a fraction sharper than the Tamron, and both are a lot sharper than the Z7200. This is because, as ever, I've randomly selected the image, and it's certainly not typical of the quality of images that the Z70-200 normally produces. And it actually produced far better images on the day as well. So let's hastily move on to the 300mm, safe in the knowledge that both Nikons performed equally well at 200mm. As you can see with this set, the 300 VR2's sharpness is true to form and well defined. I would say that the Z100-400 is just behind, with the Tamron not far off at all. All in all, I wouldn't be disappointed in any of these pictures appearing on my website. Yet again, all perfectly acceptable images. The Z100-400 is really crisp, with the 300 VR2 not far behind. The definition of the hair around the dog's face is really distinct. Okay, it's time for the big guns, the 400mm images, and I'm reintroducing the Z70-200 lens to these comparisons, but this time it has a 2x teleconverter attached. Now, it's not the latest Z1, but my Mark III, and I have to say it's still pretty impressive. Through the tunnel, and the Tamron and the Z100-400 are pretty neck to neck as far as sharpness is concerned, but over the jump it's almost hard to pick a winner. You see, because I've gone through all the images that I took on that day, and I have to say that the 100-400 is incredibly consistent. And I have to conclude that I'd be just as confident taking that to a show as my trusty Z70-200 and my 300 VR2. And given the amount of experience I've had with both those lenses, that is high praise indeed. And in case you're wondering, guys, yes, I did have permission to sit in the ring and shoot these images for this test. I wouldn't have risked testing at any show I was working at, and therefore I asked both the official photographer and the show secretary a few days before whether I could join them. Anyway, I knew while I was taking the photos that it was performing well, and although I may not have excelled in my random image choices for this video, trust me when I say zooming into all the images confirmed that it's hard to separate Nikons, both the Nikons, 3 Nikons, in quality. Now, I know a lot of you photograph birds in flight, so it seemed only right to conclude my test with a few of those taken by the Z100-400. I shot them the same day as the Agility, and although I've edited these a little, I was stunned by its quality. Now, I may not have as many keepers as I would have if I'd been using my 300 VR2, but it's certainly a lot easier and lighter and less tiring, hugely less tiring to handle. And you know, as I get older, I may well be tempted by it. Now, next time I'll be trying the Nikon 200-400 VR2, and it's over here. Until then, if you like this video, please like it, and if you really liked it, please subscribe. Especially if, like me, you really fancy the 200-400. See you soon.